"You're not adding value here," my son's wife said, so I stopped covering their bills. The morning light filtered through the blinds of my little office at the back of Margaret's Finds, the flagship boutique I'd opened 30 years ago when everyone said a widow with a young son had no business starting a business. Now it was one of 5 locations across the city. Not an empire by any means, but mine, built from grief, grit, and the determination to give my son, Adam, a future his father would have been proud of. I studied the bank statement in front of me, then signed the transfer form with a practiced flick of my wrist. Another $75,000 quietly routed through 3 separate accounts before landing in Melissa's investment portfolio, where it would appear as though my daughter-in-law had made yet another brilliant financial decision. "Mrs. Harvey," my assistant Denise knocked on the doorframe. "Your 4 o'clock appointment is here." "Thank you, Denise." I slipped the paperwork into my drawer and straightened my blouse. "And please, after 15 years, you can still call me Margaret." She smiled, but I knew she never would. Some boundaries remained comfortable for her, and I respected that. I'd learned long ago that respect was earned through actions, not demanded by titles. The appointment was with a young designer whose handcrafted jewelry I was considering for the boutiques. As we discussed terms, I couldn't help but see flashes of myself in her. The nervous energy, the dreams too big to speak aloud, the determination to prove everyone wrong. When she mentioned struggling to manage production costs while raising her toddler, I added an exclusivity bonus to her contract that made her eyes widen. "Are you sure?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I recognize talent," I said simply. "And I believe in investing in people who will value the opportunity. Unlike some people I could mention." Later that evening, as I watered the orchids in my modest home, the same one I'd raised Adam in, despite his frequent hints that I should upgrade, my phone buzzed with a text from my son. "Great news, Mom. The Series B funding is looking solid." Melissa knocked it out of the park with the investors again. I smiled, both proud and pained. The funding he was so excited about included the $75,000 I transferred that morning, money that would appear to have come from Melissa's brilliant financial acumen rather than his mother's savings account. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I texted back. "You two make quite the team." The response came quickly. "Yep, she's amazing. Gotta run, investor dinner. Talk soon." But I knew we wouldn't. Not really. Our conversations had grown shorter, less frequent over the 3 years since Adam had married Melissa. The dinner invitations had dwindled from weekly to monthly to when things settled down. My gentle suggestions to visit were met with vague promises or Melissa's carefully crafted excuses. I set down my phone and moved to the kitchen, where I began preparing a simple dinner for one. A far cry from the family meals I used to cook when Adam would burst through the door, backpack slung over one shoulder, hungry both for food and to tell me about his day. The memory of those days sustained me through the quiet evening, as did the knowledge that tomorrow I would drive across town at 6 a.m., as I did every Thursday, to stock their refrigerator with groceries before either of them woke up. Adam thought his wife did the shopping. Melissa never corrected him. That night, I dreamed of my late husband, Richard. In my dream, he sat across from me at our old kitchen table, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners as he studied me. "You're doing too much again, Maggie," he said, using the nickname only he had ever called me. "I'm doing what a mother does," I replied. He shook his head. "No, you're doing what everyone else should be doing for themselves." I woke with tears on my pillow, Richard's words echoing in my mind. But I pushed away the discomfort. What did a dream know of a mother's love, of the silent sacrifices that had shaped my entire life? The next morning, I arrived at Adam and Melissa's sprawling Victorian, the one whose mortgage I had paid off last year as an anonymous investment opportunity through my lawyer, armed with canvas bags full of organic produce, free-range eggs, and the artisanal bread Adam had loved since childhood. "I used my key for emergencies only," Melissa had emphasized, and slipped in quietly. The house was silent as I stocked their refrigerator and pantry, replacing nearly empty containers with full ones, arranging everything exactly as Melissa preferred. I was just finishing when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Adam appeared in the doorway, hair rumpled from sleep, looking startled to see me. "Mom? What are you doing here so early?" Before I could answer, Melissa appeared behind him, already dressed in one of her sleek business outfits, not a hair out of place, despite the early hour. "Margaret," she said, her voice cool, "we've talked about boundaries." "I just brought some groceries," I said, keeping my voice light. "I know how busy you both are with the company." "We can manage our own household," Melissa replied, moving past me to the coffee maker. "And we have delivery services for this sort of thing." Adam at least had the grace to look embarrassed. "Thanks, Mom, but Melissa's right. You don't need to go out of your way." I nodded, swallowing the hurt. "Of course. That's the problem," Melissa interrupted, not looking up from measuring coffee grounds. "You're always thinking for us, showing up, inserting yourself. We're not children, Margaret." "Mel," Adam said quietly, a weak protest at best. I gathered my empty canvas bags, my movements methodical, hiding the trembling in my hands. "I'll get out of your way then." As I headed for the door, I heard Melissa say to Adam, "The Jensen meeting is at 9, don't forget. And I've prepared a brief on the projected Q3 returns from my last investment. They're going to be impressed." I closed the door silently behind me. In my car, I sat for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, remembering the days when Adam would run after me, begging for one more story, one more hug before I left for work. The days when I was his hero, not an inconvenience. My phone pinged with an email notification from my lawyer. The paperwork was ready for my review regarding the next anonymous investment into Adam's company. This one for $250,000. Money that would, once again, make Melissa look like a financial genius. I started the car and drove back to my empty house, wondering how long I would continue this charade. How long I would keep pouring my life's work into ungrateful hands. How long before I would admit what Richard had always known, that love given without conditions was beautiful, but love taken without acknowledgement was just exploitation. But I kept driving, kept planning, kept giving, because that's what mothers do. Or at least, that's what this mother had always done. Until the day everything changed. The invitation to Tech Founders' annual gala arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday. Not addressed to me, of course. It had been mistakenly delivered to my address instead of Adam and Melissa's. The gold-embossed envelope announced, "In honor of rising star, Melissa Harvey," with a personal note scrawled in the corner. "Can't wait to see our favorite female investor take the stage." I turned the envelope over in my hands, feeling the weight of the expensive stationery. Another celebration of Melissa's business acumen. Another event where she would accept accolades for financial insights that had originated from my bank account. I delivered the invitation to their house that afternoon, slipping it through their mail slot rather than using my key. As I walked back to my car, I heard the front door open. "Margaret, is that you?" I turned to see Melissa standing on the porch, perfectly poised in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants, looking like she'd stepped out of a business magazine photo shoot. "Just dropping off some mail that came to my house by mistake," I said. She walked down the steps, taking the envelope from my hands. Her eyes lit up as she read it. "Perfect timing," she said, her voice suddenly warmer than it had been in months. "We were just about to call you." The "we" was clearly a formality. Adam's car wasn't in the driveway. "They're honoring me at the Tech Founders Gala next month," she continued, tapping the invitation against her palm. "I'd like you to be there." The surprise must have shown on my face, because she actually laughed, a sound I rarely heard directed at me. "Don't look so shocked, Margaret. You're still family. And besides," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "it looks good to have multi-generational support. The investors eat that up." And there it was, not an olive branch, but a prop request. "I'd be honored," I replied, because what else could I say? 2 weeks later, I sat at a table near the back of the ballroom, watching Melissa glide onto the stage to accept her award for female entrepreneurial excellence. The crystal trophy caught the light as she raised it, her smile dazzling the crowd of tech industry elites. "When I first invested in my husband's startup," she began, "everyone told me I was crazy, risk my portfolio on an unproven concept." Her portfolio, her risk. I took a sip of champagne to wash down the bitterness rising in my throat. "But I've always believed in backing visionaries," she continued. "And sometimes, the greatest visionary is the one sleeping right next to you." The audience laughed appreciatively, and I watched Adam beam from his front row seat, looking at his wife with unabashed adoration. When had my son started looking at someone that way? Had I been so busy providing for him that I'd missed the moment my boy had become a man capable of such love? Afterwards, at the reception, I stood awkwardly on the periphery as Melissa worked the room, Adam trailing in her wake. Occasionally, he would glance my way with an apologetic smile, but never quite made it over to my corner. "Mrs. Harvey?" A voice startled me from my thoughts. "I'm Daniel Cho, from Venture Capital Weekly." I shook the young reporter's hand, puzzled by his interest in me. "You must be very proud of your daughter-in-law," he said. "Notepad ready. She's become quite the force in angel investing." Any comment on her meteoric rise? The question hung in the air between us. I could have said so many things in that moment. Could have revealed that the angel was actually me, not her. Could have pulled back the curtain on the entire charade. Instead, I smiled. She certainly knows how to make an impact. The next morning, that innocuous quote appeared under my name in his article, "The Making of a Tech Empire, Melissa Harvey's Golden Touch." The piece detailed her visionary early investments and natural instinct for market opportunities, investments I had researched and opportunities I had identified. Adam called later that day, his voice unusually cold. "Melissa saw the article," he said without preamble. "She thinks you were being passive-aggressive with that reporter." What? I was genuinely confused. I barely said anything. Exactly. Your "she knows how to make an impact" comment reads like a backhanded compliment. She's worked really hard, Mom. The injustice of it burned in my chest. Adam. Look, I know things have been strained, but could you just try harder with her? This is an egg moment for us. The company is taking off, we're finally getting recognition, and I need you to be supportive instead of whatever this is. Whatever this is? I repeated slowly. Adam, I've supported you in ways you don't even— I've got to go, he interrupted. We're heading into a meeting with potential international partners. Just think about what I said, okay? The line went dead before I could respond. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, bank statements, transfer records, investment documents, the paper trail of my silent support. Nearly $2 million funneled into their lives and business over 3 years, without a word of acknowledgement or thanks. And now, I was the problem. It had been 3 weeks since the gala, 3 weeks of unreturned calls and vague text messages. I'd finally messaged Adam directly. "Missing you. How about Sunday breakfast?" His response, "Sure. Come by around 9," had sent a wave of relief through me. Maybe things could still be fixed. Sunday mornings used to be sacred. When Adam was growing up, we'd make pancakes together, the kitchen filled with laughter and the scent of maple syrup. Even through his college years, he'd come home at least twice a month for our tradition. That memory propelled me forward as I pulled into their driveway, grocery bags on the passenger seat beside me. I'd spent all Saturday evening preparing, making Adam's favorite blueberry muffins from scratch, selecting the finest coffee beans, even splurging on that artisanal jam Melissa had once mentioned liking. A peace offering of sorts. "Mom," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing here?" As I approached their front door, balancing the bags in my arms, I noticed a sleek black car I didn't recognize in the driveway. Company on a Sunday morning? I hesitated, then rang the doorbell instead of using my key. Adam answered, already dressed in what I recognized as his investor meeting outfit, crisp button-down and tailored slacks. I followed him into the kitchen, where Melissa sat at the island counter, her attention fixed on her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. She was likewise dressed for business, not the lazy Sunday morning I'd envisioned. His face fell. "Right. Sorry, I completely forgot. We've got people coming over in an hour to discuss a potential merger." He glanced back into the house, then stepped aside reluctantly. "But come in, I guess we can have a quick coffee." The question stung. We had breakfast plans? You said to come by at 9. "Good morning," I replied, setting my bags on the counter. "I brought breakfast. I thought we could—" "Morning, Margaret," she said, without looking up. My voice trailed off as I took in the scene. Half-empty coffee cups, a plate of store-bought pastries, papers spread across the table. This wasn't a household that had forgotten about breakfast plans. They'd already eaten and moved on with their day. "Oh, that's thoughtful," Melissa said, finally glancing up. Her eyes flicked to Adam. a silent communication passing between them. We actually grabbed something earlier. Big day ahead. Adam checked his watch. I really need to finish reviewing these projections before everyone arrives. I see. I began unpacking anyway, arranging muffins on a plate I found in their cupboard. Well, maybe just a little something before your meeting. Still, I persisted, setting out the jam, pouring orange juice into their crystal glasses. A wedding gift from me. Mom, Adam said, his voice tinged with exasperation. You don't need to do all this. It's just breakfast, I said, my movements growing more frantic as I tried to salvage something from this disaster. I haven't seen you in weeks, Adam. I thought we could talk. Melissa set down her tablet with a sharp click. Margaret, can I be direct? Adam shot her a warning look. Mel, maybe not now. No, this needs to be said. She turned to me fully, her expression composed but cold, this constant hovering. It's becoming problematic. We're trying to run a company. We have investors scrutinizing our every move, expecting us to be focused professionals. I stood frozen, a jar of jam in my hand. I'm just bringing breakfast. You're bringing the obligations, expectations, demands on our time that we simply can't meet right now. She gestured at the groceries, and this showing up with enough food to feed an army when we've clearly moved on from our morning. It's invasive. Invasive? The word hit like a physical blow. I'm his mother. Adam? I prompted, my voice small. And he's a grown man with a company to run, she countered. You keep treating him like he's still 12 years old. Adam remained silent, his eyes fixed on the countertop. His silence hurt more than Melissa's words. Melissa checked her watch and stood. I need to review the presentation once more before they arrive. She gathered her papers, then paused, looking directly at me. You're not adding value here, Margaret. Maybe it's time you stopped showing up unannounced. He sighed, finally looking up. She's not entirely wrong, Mom. I mean, the timing of this. We have people coming over. Important people. The betrayal left me speechless. All those years of sacrifice, of putting his needs first, of building a life that could support his dreams, reduced to an inconvenience. I began repacking the groceries with trembling hands, dignity the only thing I had left to preserve. I see, I managed, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. I apologize for the intrusion. The casual cruelty of it, delivered as if she were simply commenting on the weather, made the room spin momentary. Adam sat there, silent witness to his wife's dismissal of his mother, offering no defense. Mom, you don't have to. Adam started, guilt finally finding its voice. As I walked toward the door, grocery bags clutched against my chest like a shield, I heard Melissa's voice resume discussing valuation metrics, as if I'd already vanished. It's fine, I cut him off. You have important people coming. I understand. The words echoed as I drove away, a strange calm settling over me. She had no idea that without me, their perfect life would collapse, like a house of cards. You're not adding value here. Outside, I placed the bags carefully in my car, closed the door, and sat motionless behind the wheel. Through the kitchen window, I could see them, heads bent together over paperwork, completely in sync, my son and his wife, a partnership that had no room for me. Maybe it was time she found out. I sat in Julian Anderson's office the following Tuesday, hands folded in my lap, back straight despite the weight pressing down on me. Julian had been my attorney for 20 years. Ever since I expanded to my second boutique location, he'd helped draft Richard's will, had guided me through the complexities of business ownership as a widow, and had orchestrated every anonymous financial contribution to Adam's life. Are you absolutely certain about this, Margaret? Julian asked, peering at me over his reading glasses. The documents spread between us represented 3 years of financial entanglement that I was about to sever with surgical precision. I've never been more certain of anything, I replied. He nodded slowly. I just want to make sure you understand the implications. Once we initiate these changes, there will be significant financial consequences for them. Almost immediately. I understand. Julian sighed, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. May I speak frankly, as your friend and not just your attorney? Of course. You've spent years constructing this financial safety net, years of silent sacrifice. Are you prepared to watch it all collapse because of one hurtful comment? I smiled sadly. It wasn't just one comment, Julian. It was years of growing entitlement, of taking without acknowledgement, of treating my contributions as their achievements. That comment was simply permission. Something in my expression must have convinced him because he nodded, replaced his glasses, and began signing the documents methodically. "We'll start with the utility auto payments," he explained, sliding one form aside and picking up another. "Those will cease immediately. The mortgage will revert to their responsibility by next week's payment date. As for the equity shares, I want those handled differently," I interrupted. "Don't withdraw them all at once. That would cause the company to collapse overnight. And despite everything, I don't want to destroy what Adam has built. Transfer them to me gradually over 30 days. Julian raised an eyebrow. "That's unusually merciful, given the circumstances." "It's not mercy," I replied. "It's strategy. I want them to feel the ground shifting beneath them. I want them to scramble for solutions, to seek answers, and when they finally come looking for those answers, you'll be waiting," Julian finished, understanding dawning in his eyes. Exactly. By the time I left Julian's office, everything was in motion. The careful dismantling of the financial architecture I had constructed around my son and his wife. As I drove to my flagship boutique, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a burden I'd carried for too long. Denise greeted me with concerned eyes. "You okay, Mrs. Harvey? You look different," I suggested. She nodded. "Yes, that's it. Different. I feel different," I admitted. "Like I've finally woken up from a very long dream." The next 10 days passed in a strange, peaceful blur. I threw myself into work, personally overseeing a remodel of our newest location. I took a weekend trip to the coast, something I hadn't done since Richard died. I even went on a dinner date with a widower friend, had introduced me to nothing romantic, just pleasant conversation with someone who valued my company. Not once did I hear from Adam or Melissa. Then, exactly 11 days after my meeting with Julian, my phone rang with Adam's ringtone, the first time in almost a month. "Mom?" His voice sounded strained. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course, sweetheart. What's wrong?" He hesitated. "It's probably nothing, but we've been having some weird issues with the bills. The utilities all came due at once, with late fees attached. I thought they were on auto pay, but apparently not." "That's strange," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Maybe there was a banking error." "Maybe. It's just, with everything else going on, the mortgage payment notification came through too. I could have sworn we'd restructured that." I made sympathetic noises as he continued listing the growing financial anomalies. The puzzle pieces were starting to fall into place for him, but the picture wasn't clear yet. "And now some of our investors are asking odd questions about share distribution," he continued, growing more agitated. "Melissa's been on the phone all day trying to sort it out." "That sounds stressful," I offered. "It is, and the timing couldn't be worse. We've got that launch event next week. The one Melissa's been planning for months. If we're dealing with financial irregularities, it could spook the other investors." I remembered the invitation that had arrived in my mailbox weeks ago. Embossed with gold lettering, "Tech Revolution, the future is female," featuring Melissa as the keynote speaker. I'd tossed it directly into the recycling bin. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said. "Melissa is very resourceful." "Yeah," he sounded uncertain. "Listen, I know things have been weird between us lately, but would you mind looking over some of these financial notifications? You've always been good with that stuff." The request, the first acknowledgement of my financial acumen in years, almost made me laugh. "I'll see what I can do," I replied. "Why don't you email me the details?" As I hung up, I glanced at my calendar where I'd marked the date their financial house of cards would finally collapse completely, exactly 1 day before Melissa's big launch event. Perfect timing indeed. The invitation to Melissa's launch event remained on my coffee table, untouched. The glossy cardstock featured her professional headshot and the bold headline, "Redefining Female Leadership in Tech. An Evening with Melissa Harvey." The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 days before the event, Adam appeared on my doorstep unannounced, something he hadn't done in years. The circles under his eyes and the rumpled state of his usually impeccable clothes told me everything before he even spoke. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. I stepped aside, watching as he moved into my living room like a stranger, taking in the familiar surroundings with new eyes or perhaps old ones, rediscovering a past he'd forgotten. "Coffee?" I offered. He nodded, sinking onto the couch. When I returned with 2 steaming mugs, he was holding a framed photo from the side table, him at his college graduation. Arms around me, both of us beaming. A lifetime ago. "Remember this day?" I asked, setting his coffee down. "Yeah." He traced the edge of the frame. "Dad had been gone for 7 years by then. You worked double shifts at the boutique to put me through school." "I did what I needed to do," I said simply. He set the photo down carefully. "Mom, everything's falling apart." I sipped my coffee, waiting. "The mortgage company is demanding immediate payment or they'll initiate foreclosure proceedings. The utilities are threatening to cut services. And the investors," he ran a hand through his disheveled hair, "they're saying there are irregularities with Melissa's share acquisitions. They've frozen pending investments until they complete an ownership audit." "That sounds serious," I observed. "It's beyond serious." His voice cracked. "We've had to postpone the launch event. Melissa's devastated. She's been working on this for months. It was supposed to cement her reputation as a female pioneer in tech investment." I set my mug down with deliberate care. "Is that what she is?" He looked up sharply. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Adam," I said gently, "think about what's happening. The money trouble started exactly when—" "I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Everything hit at once. And before that, everything was perfectly fine. Bills paid automatically, mortgage handled, investment capital flowing smoothly into the company." He nodded slowly, confusion evident on his face. "Didn't that ever strike you as convenient? Almost too perfect? What are you saying?" I rose and went to my home office, returning with a thick folder. "I'm saying that financial miracles don't happen, Adam. They're constructed." I opened the folder and began laying out documents one by one on the coffee table between us. Bank statements, Chensor records, property deeds, share certificates, all with my name or my company's name, all connected to their lives. "What is all this?" His voice was barely audible. "Evidence of value added," I replied, the echo of Melissa's dismissal giving the words a sharp edge. He picked up the mortgage document with trembling hands. This says you own our house." "Technically, yes. I bought it outright last year when you mentioned struggling with the payments. The bank sent you notice of a refinancing opportunity. That was me." His face drained of color as he moved to the utility statements. "And these, all routed through one of my business accounts. Automatically paid each month for the past 3 years." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed immediately by horror as he reached for the share certificates, the final piece of the puzzle. "The company shares under Melissa's name. Mine," I confirmed. "Every investment she supposedly made came from me. Every brilliant financial decision that built her reputation was orchestrated through Julian, my attorney." Adam's hands began to shake so badly that the papers slipped from his grasp, scattering across the table. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you do all this secretly?" "At first, it was just to help," I explained. "You were so excited about the startup, but nervous about the financial risk. I wanted to give you security without wounding your pride. But then what?" "Then Melissa started taking credit. Started building her identity around financial achievements that weren't hers. And you seemed so proud of her, so I stayed silent. I told myself it didn't matter who got the credit, as long as you were happy." He buried his face in his hands. "The awards she's won, the speaking engagements, her entire reputation in the industry, built on my investments. Yes, and now you've pulled everything out." It wasn't a question. "I've reclaimed what was mine," I corrected. "There's a difference." He looked up, eyes red-rimmed. "Why now? After all this time, why pull the rug out from under us right before her biggest moment?" I leaned forward, holding his gaze steadily. "Because she told me I wasn't adding value. And you sat there and said nothing." The words hung between us, heavy with truth. "Oh God," he whispered. "The breakfast?" When she said, "Yes," I confirmed. That morning, Adam stood abruptly, pacing the small living room. "She doesn't know any of this. She thinks it's all been her. The investments, the mortgage arrangement, everything. What am I supposed to tell her?" I gathered the papers back into the folder. The truth would be a good start. This will destroy her. No, I corrected him gently. This will reveal her. There's a difference. He turned to look at me, really look at me, perhaps for the first time in years. And what about me? What does this reveal about me? I stood and crossed to him, placing a hand on his cheek, the same gesture I'd used to comfort him since childhood. That you've been asleep, my son. It's time to wake up. 6 months after the day Adam learned the truth, I sat on the patio of a small cafe across from Elise Chen, a young mother of 2 with bright eyes and an even brighter business plan for a mobile app that would connect parents with affordable childcare options. I just can't believe you're willing to invest this much, she said, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the contract between us. Most venture capitalists wanted me to prove market viability on a much smaller scale first. I smiled, thinking of the 3 other women entrepreneurs I'd backed in recent months, all mothers with brilliant ideas and genuine gratitude for the opportunity. I'm not most venture capitalists, I replied. I believe in your vision, and I believe in you. As Elise excitedly outlined her implementation timeline, my phone buzzed with a text message. Adam, can we talk? Simple words that once would have sent me rushing to respond. Now, I let them sit as I focused on the woman across from me, someone who valued what I brought to the table. Later that evening, I walked along the shoreline near my new beachfront cottage, a purchase that had raised eyebrows among my small circle of friends who had only ever known me to live modestly. Shouldn't you be saving for retirement? Denise had asked, concerned. I am retired, I'd replied. This is what I saved for. The sunset painted the water in shades of amber and rose, colors Richard would have appreciated. In the months since everything had changed, I'd found myself thinking of him more clearly, hearing his voice in my memories without the haze of grief that had colored the years after his passing. You're doing too much again, Maggie. Not anymore, I whispered to the ghost of him in the fading light. My phone buzzed again. Adam wasn't giving up easily, a trait he'd inherited from me. Please, Mom. I know I don't deserve it, but I need your advice. After a moment's hesitation, I typed back, coffee tomorrow, 10 a.m. The response was immediate. I'll be there. Thank you. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, continuing my walk as darkness settled over the beach. The aftermath of my financial withdrawal had been exactly as I'd predicted, swift and devastating. The launch event had been canceled entirely, not just postponed. Several investors had backed out upon discovering the irregularities in ownership disclosure. Adam and Melissa's Perfect Victorian had indeed gone up for sale, at a loss in a buyer's market. The startup had been acquired by a larger tech firm for a fraction of its projected value, with Melissa's name notably absent from all final paperwork. She had tried to apologize, of course. 3 weeks after Adam's visit to my house, she'd arrived with an elaborate gift basket and rehearsed contrition. I had no idea, she'd insisted, eyes darting around my modest living room, reassessing its contents with new understanding. If I'd known you were behind everything, you would have been kinder? I'd finished for her, shown gratitude, acknowledged my contributions. Her silence had been answer enough. Now, as I turned back toward my cottage, lights glowing warmly against the darkening sky, I felt no vindication, no satisfaction in their downfall. Only peace, the kind that comes from finally acting in alignment with your own worth. Adam arrived precisely at 10 the next morning, looking both better and worse than the last time I'd seen him. Thinner, more careworn, but clearer somehow, as if a fog had lifted from behind his eyes. The cottage looks nice, he said, as I led him to the kitchen. Very you. That's because I bought it for me, I replied, pouring coffee into mugs painted by a local artist I'd recently invested in. Not to impress anyone else. He accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. Melissa and I are separating. The news didn't surprise me. I'm sorry it came to that. Don't be, he stared into his cup. It needed to happen. We've spent the last 6 months trying to rebuild on honesty, but there wasn't much there once the facade came down. I waited, sensing there was more. I'm starting over, he continued. New apartment, new job, entry-level position at Regan Technologies. Not in leadership? I asked, genuinely curious. He shook his head. Turns out, when your company collapses amid financial irregularities, Executive doors don't exactly swing open for you. His smile was wry but not bitter. But it's good, actually. I'm learning things I should have learned years ago. Building skills instead of relying on other people's resources. The acknowledgement, however oblique, warmed something in me. "And what about you?" he asked. "Denise mentioned you're investing in new businesses?" "Women-led startups," I confirmed. "Mothers, specifically. They understand value in ways others don't." He nodded slowly, understanding the pointed comment. I deserved that. It wasn't meant as a barb, Adam, just a truth I've learned. We sipped our coffee in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again. "I miss you, Mom. Not your money or your help or anything else. Just..." The simple honesty of it brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I'm right here," I said. "I always have been." Later, after he left with tentative plans to return for dinner the following week, I walked back to the shore. The morning sun glittered across the waves, brilliant and clarifying. I thought about the new businesses I was helping to build, about my son finding his way back to authenticity, about the life waiting to be lived now that I was no longer pouring myself into ungrateful hands. I hadn't done it for revenge, although many might see it that way. I'd done it for something far more precious and far more difficult to claim after a lifetime of giving peace. And standing there with the salt breeze washing over me, no obligations except those I chose freely, no burdens except those worth carrying. I finally understood what Richard had been trying to tell me in my dreams all those months ago. It felt like the first breath after drowning.